Welcome everyone, Christine here with a discussion about the Elden Ring game created in a universe created by George R.R. Martin and obviously from software. It's a pretty damn good looking game from an artistic point of view. It seems pretty interesting, but it does have some major problems in terms of performance and in terms of the controls on PC with mouse and keyboard. And before a legion of people say, oh, you should play this game with the controller, I'm gonna say this outright. There are many people who play Dark Souls with mouse and keyboard, many people who play it well, many people on a very high PvP level that play with mouse and keyboard because being able to aim with mouse and keyboard is vastly superior than the controller, and that doesn't matter in PvP. So yes, Dark Souls games have been played by quite a lot of people on a very high level with mouse and keyboard. However, this game does have issues. It has issues in terms of the controls, it has issues in terms of the mouse, it has issues in terms of performance that, honestly, like, I'm 20-30 minutes in, and I'm already at the point that I'm so frustrated by these problems that I'm not sure if I want to keep playing. And let me explain what the issues are. So, we finally have mouse and keyboard prompts. It only took you so many games to actually get that going. I mean, I guess Sekiro, but yeah, it took them a long time to actually get that sorted, and not in Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3. We do have them for the Dark Souls 1 remastered version. So you do have keyboard and mouse prompts, but they do start on gamepad. It's like, why would you start by default on gamepad? Actually, here's a genuine question for a company making a PC version of a game. Why don't you do what virtually every other company in the industry does from software and have it automatically being selected by your actual game, dependent on whether or not you have a controller plugged in and being in use? Because, you know, if I put a controller in my computer for God of War, it's going to automatically detect that, and it's going to switch to controller prompts. If I switch to a mouse and keyboard, if I press a button on my mouse and keyboard, or unplug my controller, it's going to switch to mouse and keyboard. Yay! We have mouse and keyboard prompts, but we have to go to the menu. Like, maybe some people would use a mouse and keyboard in certain areas and switch to a controller in other areas. Just an idea. Just a fucking idea, because I'm not willing to tolerate bullshit like this from gaming companies anymore. Not in 2022. Not when there's so many other games on the market that do a lot of this stuff better. I'm sorry, but From Software being lazy is no longer acceptable. They've made some amazing games. They've also made a bunch of crap as well when it comes to this kind of stuff. And they've been very, their PC versions have been abysmal from the very beginning. We just tolerated them because of the quality of the inherent quality of their games. But no longer. I do not accept this any longer. If a company like Sony can make me a really great PC version for God of War, then yes, I do expect the same damn thing from Namco Bandai, and I do expect the same damn thing from Software. If they don't, they're just being lazy and they're just being cheap, and I'm gonna call them out on that. So that's one issue, and yes, I am making this point because it is bullshit to begin with, especially the fact that, yeah, you start the game, it's gamepad settings. Oh, great. Well, at least we have HDR, right? And for some reason, they have some weird settings from the beginning, like the HUD is auto. It's like, it should be on. Like, honestly, it should be on. Because you want to see your HP or stamina, all that. You don't want to start hitting an enemy, then it shows up and then might disappear in the middle of combat. You need to have that information. Having that information is crucial. But anyway, moving on to controls. Let's look at the control. The default control scheme is pretty terrible. And we can actually talk about controls. Why is it that I have to press Q to close or go back to something? I mean, S works in some situations, but it doesn't work in all situations. Or entering a menu. Like, oh, maybe I want to use the enter button. Yeah, good luck with that. Because if I press enter in these menus, nothing happens. It's like, do you guys not use computers at all? Because we know you make these games on a computer. It's like logic, simple logic. Mouse and keyboard is not the same as a controller. It is different. And we've seen this better. We've seen it better in Jedi Fallen Order. We've seen it better in God of War. Both of them have vastly better controls for the menus, for the game in general. And both of them have vastly superior setups for the PC and mouse control than this crap has. Like this game, a lot of the default controls, and keep in mind I've changed quite a few things here. A lot of the like some of the default controls, like, oh, hold down shift and a mouse button to do it. Okay, but what if I don't know, want to use shift as my block key, and then I want to right click for my heavy attack? Well, if I was using the default controls, then I'd be parrying. So I have to set that up differently. So yeah, it is frustrating, but that's manageable. It is manageable to set up the controls. It feels weird, like this is inferior to even Dark Souls 3. Like Dark Souls 3, Dark Souls 2 had better controls. Like this just feels worse than even those games. And it's not like those games were paragon of mouse and keyboard gaming or PC gaming. They certainly weren't. So that's an issue. The default controls are horrible. It's annoying to have a lot of this stuff happening. But there is a major problem with mouse and keyboard, and that is the mouse sensitivity. Here it's set to 0. This is how the camera moves with my DPI on my mouse to about 500. This is the DPI setting. I just clicked on my button on my mouse to switch to the DPI setting that I use pretty much everything else. I use it on my browser. I use it in every single game that I play. This is how it moves. If you don't realize, this is incredibly fast. I can't control the game like this. That is insanely fast. It is uncontrollable. What's the solution? Well, beyond the fact that they screwed it up again and they have the worst mouse controls and honestly worst setup in terms of controls in general on PC since Dark Souls 1. Yes, I'm going to compare the controls of this game to Dark Souls 1. That should give you an idea of how little of an effort they have put in this game in terms of the mouse and keyboard version or the PC version in general. And believe me, I'm not done from it. How do you fix this? Well, I imagine if I set my DPI to about 1,000, it won't be too slow, because the problem with 500, it does feel sluggish, right? The problem with my high DPI setting, which is about 8,000 or something like that, 6,000, is that it's too fast. So about 1,000, maybe a bit more, maybe a bit less, will probably get the job done. It does create issues in terms of like navigating the menus. This is way too slow, but I'll deal with that. But solutions. How many games from this company do we need to tolerate where we have to find some fix outside of it? Like, how many games? How much do we need to tolerate this from this fucking company? Because I'm sorry. If From Software keeps doing this stuff, it should bite them in the ass. I'm not saying it necessarily will. I mean, there's a reason they have a legion of fans. They've done a lot of things right, but this is horrible. And I'm not even finished. This game is locked to 60 FPS, and that's not because the engine can't support more than 60 FPS. No, it's because they enforce VSync. There is no VSync option in the menu. There is a way to force it through a mod outside of the game. Ooh, wonderful. But you won't be able to play online. Are they so concerned about people having an advantage because of a higher FPS than others? Okay. It's 2022. That mentality may have worked 10 fucking years ago. It doesn't apply in this day and age. Plain and simple, it just doesn't. It shouldn't apply in this day and age. I understand that some people may have an advantage because of a higher FPS. I get that concern, but let's be blunt about it. Souls games have never been the best balanced games in multiplayer to begin with. Let's be very, very clear on that. So if that's the argument, then it's a nonsensical one as far as I see it. It's a bullshit one. We are in an era of 4K monitors. We're in an era of 1440, 14.4 hertz monitors, or even much higher. There is a mod to fix it to unlock the FPS. So again, the engine supports that. They just decide to lock the FPS. Not that you would even be able to play on a higher FPS than 60, to be very clear on this, because the game runs like ass. That's where I'm going to get to. So I've set all the settings to maximum. Even if I set them to low, I will still not have a consistent 60 FPS. Like right now, I'm getting 58, 59. So basically, I am at the cap. I'm being limited by VSync here. But here's the problem. I get an enormous amount of FPS drops playing this game. Like for instance, right here, it dropped to 40, 49 specifically, 52, all that. So you get these constant FPS drops as you're traversing the worlds. They're probably some of the worst cases of FPS drops, stuttering, freezes that I've seen in a game for quite a long time. And God of War had issues, don't get me wrong, with performance and crashes and all that. This but at least God of War had a consistent frame rate. Like, that's the thing. It's one thing to have a low FPS. It's another thing if that FPS is dropping, especially in the middle of a boss battle. Because if you get FPS drops in the middle of a boss battle, especially when that boss is doing an attack that will kill you if you don't dodge or block, and you're getting that FPS drop, or you're getting a micro freeze or whatever, if that's happening, then you might fail just because of that. And I've already had that happen in certain encounters. Like, I've tried I've tried to deal with certain bosses, and I've had these kind of drops in those boss encounters, and it got me killed. So what's the solution? Do I play on low settings, and even then I still get those kind of FPS drops? It's certainly not as bad, but I still get them even on low settings. Do I play a game? Well, I don't find that acceptable, because one, my computer is actually a pretty damn good one. Oh, it's not the top of the line RTX 3090. Sorry, I don't have a fucking fortune to spend on a computer, nor do I believe a game should require that kind of money to run at the 60 FPS or to run at the stable frame rate. But clearly, in From Software's mind, it's acceptable the way they've released the game in terms of its performance, FPS drops, and stuttering. So yeah. Here's my conclusion. This is the worst PC version of a From Software game I've seen since Dark Souls 1. It's not as bad as Dark Souls 1, which didn't even have 1080p support on it, or more than 720p in-game rendering. It's nowhere near as bad as that, to be very clear on this issue. But it is the single worst version, the lowest effort version that they put since that. Sekiro is better. Dark Souls 2 was better for some of the issues Dark Souls 2 had in terms of controls, but we could deal with that. Dark Souls 3 was significantly better. Despite, like, Dark Souls 3, you picked that up with mouse and keyboard, you could play it from the very beginning. It wasn't frustrating and it wasn't annoying. It ran well, the performance was there. What the hell has happened since then? What's happened with Elden Ring? And if I hear an argument, oh, with the pandemic and all that, well, okay. That's an issue we are all dealing with. That's not an issue an individual company is dealing with. That's an issue all companies are dealing with. And clearly some are dealing with it significantly better than others, obviously. So yeah, I am pissed off because it is annoying to have a Souls game that does seem pretty interesting in terms of its universe, because a universe that was created by one of my favorite authors. Is genuinely frustrating to see a game like this being taken down by a really shitty version, or poor optimization, poor controls, poor decision making by the company, and laziness, outright laziness. Costina here, signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications, and stay tuned for more. We shall see whether or not I actually do a playthrough of this game, because right now I am about to throw it out the window.